B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'nasliach. So picking up from where we left off last week, we were learning about the darkness within. So this is part 3 of that same shi'ur. Hopefully, Bezrat Hashem, tonight, we are hoping to finish this chapter as well. So last week we left off just explaining some of the details of what it means to have this darkness within. And in some ways, I could say in some ways, it could kind of make a person kind of feel a little hopeless. You know, like you're telling me that everybody's got this darkness within them and everyone can give in, everyone can lose, so we're all losers. I don't understand. So what hope do we really have? So we'll get to that. It says, let's continue from where we left off. Our rabbis have taught us how far a person can go with this format of using this darkness in their life. When this choshech, this darkness, overpowers a person. When we see there is a commandment in the Torah, the commandment goes for Kohanim and Kohen Gadols. I see we have one Kohen here. Right. So Kohanim and Kohen Gadols have set rules that only is only their requirements, nobody else's. Now we know that there's 613 mitzvot in the Torah, but no one is able to actually do all the 613 of the Torah. It's physically you can't do them because some of them are for Kohanim, some of them are for Levi'im, right? As a whole, when we keep the Torah, we keep the 613 together because we are all Jews together. But the Kohanim have set rules. And one of them is, it says, Vehu isha bivtuleha yikach, almana ugrusha v'chalala lo yikach. This is about the Kohen Gadol. It says that the Kohen Gadol has to take a woman that's never been divorced, she cannot be a widow, and she cannot be a chalala. We won't discuss what a chalala is. But he cannot marry a woman that's been divorced. He cannot marry a woman that's a widow. And this mitzvah truly needs us to explain it. We need to explain this mitzvah of what it means that a Kohen Gadol cannot marry a widow or a divorcee. What difference does it make? What loss is there if a Kohen or a Kohen Gadol marries a grusha, a divorcee, or an almana? Now, Kohen, regular Kohen, is not allowed to marry a divorcee, right? But a regular Kohen is allowed to marry an almana, a widow. However, a Kohen Gadol can't marry neither. None of them. So why? Aren't there very righteous, great women that can really actually help the Kohen in his life? Just because a woman, chas v'shalom, bar minan, lo alenu, became an almana, does it mean that a Kohen Gadol cannot marry her? Wasn't it her fault that she became a widow? Ella. Now listen to this. Everyone, this is going to come as a shock to everybody. You're not going to believe what you're going to hear right now. Our Torah literally digs deep into the soul of every single person. And it really opens up exactly what is within every single person. In the Sefer Midrash Talpiot, it says one of the reasons for this mitzvah of a Kohen Gadol not being allowed to marry a grusha and an almana, a widow. שיש חשש גדול שמא הכהן הגדול ייתן עיניו באיזו אשת איש ובשעה שייכנס לקודש הקודשים יום הכיפורים יכוון בשם המפורש על בעלה שימות. You guys ready for this? It says, because we are afraid that if the Kohen Gadol is allowed to marry a widow, he might come to like some woman at some point in his life, and unfortunately the woman's married. She's a married woman, so he can't have her. What's going to happen? We're afraid that on Yom Kippur, which is coming up, We're afraid that on Yom Kippur, when he goes into the Kodesh HaKodashim, and he's so holy on that day, he is so powerful, because the Shekhinah is right there with him. And as he's about to pray, he starts thinking about this woman, and within his heart, somehow, he wishes or he prays that he could have her, and will cause the woman's husband to die. And because the Kohen Gadol might pray that the person's husband might die, should die so that he could have her, what does the Torah ascribe? The Torah says a Kohen Gadol cannot marry an almanah, a widow. He cannot marry a divorcee. He can't. We're not even going to take a chance of him to ever want to come to say, oh boy, you know what? Comes Yom Kippur, I'm going to go into the Kodesh HaKodashim. I need to marry that woman. So okay. So maybe I'll pray for the woman's husband to die so that I can have her. Now, I mean, come on. The Kohen Gadol, you have to understand who the Kohen Gadol was, who these Gedolim, these greats, the Kohen Gadol, they used to tie a rope around his feet, his legs, when he would go into the Kodesh HaKodashim, because the Kodesh HaKodashim was such a holy place that if he would for a moment take his concentration off of the task at hand, he would die on the spot, which happened many times. If the Kohen Gadol was not holy on a very high spiritual level on that day, he would die on the spot. In fact, he was taken away from his family several days before Yom Kippur, and he was kept in a special room with very great chachamim that would learn with him Torah day and night, making sure that he learns to focus only on holy thoughts. Not only that, on the night before Yom Kippur, chachamim would sit all night like Hoshana Rabbah, and he would learn with him out loud. And the Mishnah says that they would sit with him and they would wake him up, keep on waking him up. Hey, don't fall asleep. It's not time to fall asleep. You need to have such focus. Even sleep can't, disturb your focus right now of what you're about to do in the morning. And this is what level the Kohen Gadol was on. And the Kohen Gadol would do it. Some Kohanim did it for 40, 50, 60 years. Same thing. And we're going to do it Be'ezrat Hashem on Yom Kippur when it comes. B'sha'a tova mutzlahat for Olam Yisrael. We're going to read the Seder HaAvodah. I always tell people to really pay attention to the Seder HaAvodah. Many people have these Sidurim. We have our Machzorim in our hands, some of which, are in a language we don't understand for some people, and they don't have the English. And then the Chazan's going his own speed so that we can't, the person can't really follow. So you're trying to make it as much as you can. And my suggestion to everyone is always, take a Machzor that has a translation in the language that you understand, and go over things before Yom Kippur. Try to understand what you're about to do. Like the Kohen Gadol, he would prepare several days before Yom Kippur. Take the Tefillah, the book of the Machzor of Yom Kippur, and really go through some of these tefillot, some of the things that we're going to do, especially the Seder HaAvodah, which is in the Musaf, the repetition Musaf, especially of Yom Kippur. And that Seder HaAvodah is basically what the Kohen Gadol used to do in the Beit HaMikdash, in the Kodesh HaKodashim on the day of Yom Kippur. It was such a high and mighty task. It was an unbelievable task. You have to see what the Kohen Gadol was just through that. Those are the times that the men, usually when we say Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed, we bent down all the way on our knees in Bet Knesset. That's what the Kohen Gadol would do. In fact, the Kohen Gadol would go all flat onto the ground and he would bow. And the Kohanim would do the same. Now we're talking about this individual here. And even for him, the Torah had to put boundaries in place for such a person in such a caliber, because he might come and pray for someone's wife to die so he could have her. Now we think to ourselves, come on, we're talking about the Kohen Gadol. Even the Kohen Gadol? Yes. That's what the Mishnah is teaching us. That's what the Midrash is teaching us. Even the Kohen Gadol, everyone has this choshech. We all have this darkness. And we have to tame it in a way that it does not come and overpower us. Just like with the Kohen Gadol. How do you tame such a thing? How do you do it? By making fences. For the Kohen Gadol, it meant that Hashem has to make a rule book for him only, that he can't marry a widow, he can't marry a divorcee. So you know what? He'll never even come to think about the guy's husband, the woman's husband, because at the end, even if the person's husband dies, he can't have her. That's how we can tame this evil choshech, this darkness within us. How? By making gedarim, by making guidelines and fences for ourselves. We cannot tame it if we're constantly being enticed by those things that we enjoy, by the pleasures of life. Yeah, if we want to change, that's not going to happen like that. If it's going to be day in, day out, same old, with the same desires that we always give into, then obviously we're never going to change. What we need to do is build fences around the things that we know challenge us in life, so that we don't even go near those things. We don't even come close to the proximity of those things that have always challenged us in life, those darknesses, those dark things that we don't want to come close to. And everyone has their own challenges. Everyone has things that entice them. Some people have a yetzer hara for money. Some people have a yetzer hara for theft. Some people have a yetzer hara for non-kosher food. Some people's yetzer hara is keeping Shabbat. I don't know. Whatever it is, the only way that we could achieve our goals is to set our perimeter way before those challenges of ours. So many people, I've had so many people ask me this, how could we keep Shabbat? We can't go to shul because our home is so far. We have to drive. How do we do it? So the example of building those gedarim and those fences are, so if Shabbat is a priority, which it should be, that is a priority, that is our life, then we move. Or when we're buying a home, we have to always take into consideration how far we are with our synagogue, because that's supposed to be a pillar, that's supposed to be a midpoint in our lives. A second home has to be the Bet Knesset for every Jew. That's our second home. So why go buy a home God knows where that is miles and miles away from Bet Knesset and then give ourselves the excuse that I can't keep Shabbat because I'm too far away from the synagogue. I'm not going to go to shul. So, okay, don't be too far from the synagogue. For thousands of years, Jews have been living in ghettos. Why? Why did we have the ghettos? Everywhere in the world, Jews had ghettos. Why did we have ghettos? Because those were our guidelines. In the ghetto, we knew what we're doing. We knew how to behave. We knew how to be as Jews. And the shul was right there. The kosher food was right there. As the galut expanded, and Baruch Hashem, Jews started becoming more and more successful, leaving the ghetto, for some people, meant leaving Judaism. Because then, I don't have to be next to the synagogue. I'll just drive to the synagogue. I don't have to be this and that. I don't have to eat kosher food. I'll just have the market right next door, and so on and so forth. So if we prepare our guidelines and from beforehand for those things that challenge us, then those things will no longer be a challenge. For the Kohen Gadol in the Beit HaMikdash, it wasn't a challenge to think about somebody else's wife and want the person's husband to pass away. It was no longer a challenge because he knew he can't have her anyway. So that was that. And we have a mitzvah in the Torah that says, Lifnei iver lo titen michshol. We're not allowed to put a stumbling block before a person, in front of a blind person. And that halakha is it's a very broad halakha. It doesn't actually technically mean only not to put a stumbling block before a blind person. It expands to much more than that. And basically what it means is you cannot you cannot teach the wrong things to someone. You cannot have someone that doesn't know their right and left in a situation. You can't be responsible for them making mistakes. Do not teach the wrong things to people. Right? Do not give an opportunity to someone to do something wrong. Don't be a helping hand for someone to get themselves into trouble. So the Torah is in the same way. The Torah acts the same way. The Torah says, why should I challenge the Kohen Gadol to something that he might regret later? Because he might want to marry someone else's wife. He's going to come and pray, and that person's wife is going to die, and then, he's going to regret that for the rest of his life. So I'm not even going to challenge him with it. What I'll do is, I'll just make any widow, any divorcee, all of those people, asur to him. They're prohibited to him anyway. So you know what? He won't even come to think about it. That's how we have to be. That's how we have to act in our lives as well. We continue. And we see also, Bnei Israel, like we said, Bnei Israel in the Midbar, in the desert, that it was right after we saw the splitting of the sea, and during the Chet HaEgel, it was the Chet HaEgel that brought the Jews, the worshipping of the golden calf, that brought the Jews to the lowest point in our lives. Because it wasn't, as we know, the Chachamim tell us that it wasn't just worshipping the golden calf that the Jews did. However, it was much more. They went over many of the worst averot in the Torah possible. All of which was right after what? After we had witnessed God's presence himself at Har Sinai. And then we had 3 days of Hagbala, which we reached the highest heavens. And then we saw the voice of Hashem, literally. We saw God's voice talking to us. And we saw the mountain on fire. And we heard God's voice as it shook the entire universe. It's crazy. At that time, when we said Na'aseh v'nishma, anybody that was blind became healed. Anyone that was lame, they couldn't walk, they would be able to walk again. There were no more paralyzed people, there were no more blind people, there were no more sick people, there were no more weak people. Everyone got healed. Can you imagine? Everyone got healed. Everything became perfect. It was like creation. There was no more death, nothing. It was beautiful. We were literally living in Gan Eden with everything that it has to offer. And then what happens? We start building ourselves a golden calf and we start worshipping it and we say, Ze Elokecha Israel. This is your God, O Israel. How does that happen? See? This challenge is something that challenges everybody. It's the choshech from within. If we don't uproot this darkness, if we don't deal with it, it will come back no matter what level we're on. It doesn't matter. And the key is to constantly be working on ourselves, never to stop. That's the only way that it will happen. מצינו דוגמה נוספת במעשה שתיהן הנשים שעמדו למשפט אצל שלמה המלך. Everyone knows this story. I think everyone knows this story, right? There were two women that came to Shlomo HaMelech with a problem. They both had one baby. There was one baby. And they both said that this is their baby. But it could only be one of theirs. It can't be both of their baby. Now what happened was, one of the women, her baby had unfortunately died. But however, she wanted the child of the other baby. And they were arguing. One was saying that it was hers. The other one was saying that it was hers. So they brought the case in front of Shlomo HaMelech. Now, think about it for a moment. What would this woman gain by taking another person's child? What would she gain? Because at the end of the day, even if she would win the case and they would give the child to her, her entire life she would know that this is not her child. Her entire life she would walk around knowing she's raising another woman's child. And not only she's raising another woman's child, she stole the child from that woman. She took a baby from its rightful mother. So what would she gain? What would she gain by coming to Shlomo HaMelech trying to get someone else's baby? It's crazy. So it says, Achrabotenu yardu le'imke nishmata. But our chachamim go to the depths of every person's neshama, and with her as well. Share HaGemara omeret, the Gemara says in Masechet Nedarim, Sh'Hashem itbarach hatpiya ba'adam teva lehetiv lezulato. God has given a natural sense to every human being that we want to give to other people. We want to have an entity to be able to give to. That's the secret of life, right? Bezo hayta kol kavarata. All she wanted was to have a child that she can give to, that she can raise, that she can be the one to be able to say, I raised him, I gave to him, I was the one who nourished him. Now, from one side, you're looking at a woman that is a thief. She wants to take another person's child. It's the worst kind of theft, taking someone else's baby. Matzad Hasheni, from the other side, you're looking at a woman that's a Rahmanit. She's a merciful woman. All she wants to do is to have this child so that she can give the greatest life to this child that she can possibly do. So which is it? Is she evil? Or is she just a merciful mom that she just wants to be a mother? Which is it? What did Shlomo HaMelech actually do? Shlomo HaMelech said, you know what? I can't figure this out. I don't know whose baby this is. So cut the baby in half, give half to her and half to her. To which the real mother started crying and screaming, please don't cut the baby. Just give her the whole child. Let her have it. And from them, Shlomo HaMelech said, that's the real mother. The one that had the mercy to want to give away the child and not to see the child being killed and cut in half, that's the real mother. Now, the other woman was ready to see a child be cut in two. She was ready to say that if she doesn't have it, no one can have it. This is the kind of person she was. Obviously not, but in that moment, that's what she was. And that is what Shlomo HaMelech teaches us. That's what the Chachamim say. With this choshech, she might have been the most merciful person, but at that moment, the darkness takes over and she just has one purpose. Either I have this kid or I don't have this kid. Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz asks in Sichot Musar, Sheish la'ayin ech samach Shlomo HaMelech al chokhmato lemor. How did Shlomo HaMelech even rely on his chokhmah to say, Gizrat ha'eled, to cut the child? How could Shlomo HaMelech take such a risk? How could he really know what's going to happen? How did he rely on his chokhmah to say, fine, cut this child in half? However, Shlomo HaMelech knew with his chokhmah, Sha'adam b'sh'at ha'chet hu b'matzav shel nefila. Listen to what Shlomo HaMelech says. Shlomo HaMelech understood that when a person is in a time of chet, when a person is intertwined and in a moment of sin, when a person has the darkness take over already, and you're already in the midst of committing a vile act, a sin, and especially if that person has been lured into a matzav, a situation of theft, if the opportunity comes, she'll also kill. Shlomo HaMelech teaches an unbelievable lesson in human psyche and how the human being works. How did Shlomo HaMelech know that one of the women is going to agree to this child to be cut in half? Maybe both of them would turn around and say, no, okay, I didn't sign up for this. No, don't cut her in half. Even the thief, even the woman that's not the rightful mother, maybe she would also come and say, no, I didn't sign up for this. Fine, I lied. How did Shlomo HaMelech know that she's going to stay on her word and say, you know what, cut the baby? How did he know that the true mother is going to be the only one to have mercy? And this is when we understand that Shlomo HaMelech really knew the depth of a person's soul. Shlomo HaMelech banked on this idea, on this chokhmah, that once a person is so deep in an averah, especially theft in such caliber, then murder is just the next step. They don't even realize it. They'll step right into it. Shlomo HaMelech knew, if there is a woman here that's stealing someone else's child, then probably they won't care if they murder either. They'll go all the way. And he was so right. That's how a human being is. And that's how this darkness works. You give into it just a little bit, the rest will come easily. I don't think anybody, even if in today's world, all these people that go to rob people's homes or rob banks or whatever it is that they do, you think they were banking on finding people just to kill them? No, unless they were crazy. If they're just thieves, they're just going to steal. And then what happens? The opportunity comes up, someone comes up and puts up a fight, they're ready to kill. But they were never killers before that. But once you're already in an avera, in a situation of sin, you're committing such vile acts, there's no telling what else you will do. Because that darkness has already taken over. And that's how Shlomo HaMelech knew that he's going to find the rightful mother of this child by knowing that for sure the mother or the woman that's lying will come forward by accepting my decision to kill this child. Because once she's gone this far, she won't care about the child's life anymore. She's gone too far now. We also find in the Gemara, Masechet Makot, Shalchu Rabbi Akiva v'chachamim v'ra'u shu'al yotzei mibet kodesh HaKodeshim. Rabbi Akiva and his students were walking and they saw the Kodesh HaKodeshim after it was destroyed, the Holy of Holies. And they saw Yerushalayim as it was plowed over. They saw a fox coming out of the Holy of Holies, the place that we just said the Kohen Gadol had to have a rope tied to his feet so that if he dies, they could pull him out because no one would dare go in the Kodesh HaKodeshim. The Holy of Holies. And then they saw a fox coming out of it. And the Chachamim cried. And then what happened? They saw that Rabbi Akiva was laughing. And when they asked him, why is it that you are laughing? Rabbi Akiva turns to his Talmidim, to the other Chachamim, in fact, and he says, why are you crying? And they tell Rabbi Akiva, well, we're crying because we just saw a fox come out of the same spot. The Kodesh HaKodeshim, which would have the Holy of Holies, which would have the Kohen Gadol only enter once a year. And maybe he would come out alive. We would pray that he would come out alive. And we just saw a fox come out of there. Is that a laughing matter? We're crying for that. Why are you laughing? Rabbi Akiva answers and says, I'm laughing for the same reason. Because just as that, the destruction of the temple, was a nevuah, was a prophecy, and it came true, the rest of the prophecy will also come true, which is the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash and the coming of Moshiach. So, these are not just words that were just written. What do they mean? The Ba'ala Musar say, the rabbis were crying on destruction because the destruction represents darkness that's going to take the world, which it did after the destruction of the temple. The world in many, many levels stooped into many levels of darkness. But Rabbi Akiva was laughing. Why? Because he saw the light. Rabbi Akiva said, as much as darkness there is, I still see the light. There's so much light. There's so much Shekhinah b'Kadosh Baruch Hu. All we have to do is tap into it. And it'll be okay. Because this is the comfort that will teach us and tell us that we are so close to this Geulah, to the redemption. And it's the same feeling we see with Yehuda in the Torah. One of the tribes, Yehuda. When the story happens after the selling of Yosef HaTzadik, all of them sold Yosef. After the selling of Yosef, everyone went to their own thing. Some of them were mourning. Yaakov Avinu was mourning. Reuven was mourning. It was a very sad time. What was Yehuda doing? Yehuda shalach v'yarad ad ish adulami, went to ish adulami, and our rabbis tell us, Yaakov asuk be'evlo. Yaakov Avinu was mourning for the loss of Yosef. Ve'Yosef betza'aro, and Yosef HaTzadik was in deep, deep tsa'ar. He was in deep pain and anguish. Reuven besakov ta'anito, and Reuven was also crying and he was fasting. Yehuda halach להתעסק באורו של Mashiach. Yehuda went to start the seed of Mashiach. How? By the story of Tamar. We all know that Tamar, who became Yehuda's wife later on, she became the mother of the seed of King David, and later on, obviously, the seed of Moshiach Tzidkenu. Everyone was sad in all this darkness. However, that light was there. People didn't notice it. Yehuda himself didn't notice it because everyone was just so busy thinking about the loss that they had. Yet, that light was there. And it was the light of Mashiach. The Shekhinah of Hashem was there. V'chen ra'inu etzel Boaz. We also saw with Boaz. We have one question before we go. Okay, the Kohen Gadol, how the Kohen Gadol was elected was, we had the Nevi'im and we had the Kohen Gadols. Sometimes they were picked by the Nevi'im. Well, they were definitely not voted for. The Kohen Gadol was a very high caliber. But unfortunately, in the Second Temple period, there were Kohen Gadols that actually bought their way into being the high priest. And every year, in fact, they would die right at the start of the services because they were not spiritual enough and they were not for the job. Yet many, many times, many Kohanim bought their way to become a Kohen Gadol knowing they're going to die, but they just couldn't resist having a taste of that holiness. But that's a discussion for another time. We see by Boaz, who later on married Ruth, right, in the story of Ruth, HaMoaviyah. Boaz had 60 children, 30 boys and 30 girls. Uvyom echad, Parminan lo alenu, we should never know of this. And in one day, he buried his wife and his 60 children. Boaz lost 60 children and his wife in one day. The most painful thing anyone could ever go through. Barminan. Lo alechem lo alenu. No one should ever know of these things. Mi hayam me'ez lachashov al hemshech chayim la'achar makah kazo. Who would have thought that anyone could continue life after such a thing? What did Boaz do? He did not break. Halach v'itchaten im Ruth keshehu ben 400 shana. Boaz was 400 years old. We have records. He was a very old man. At a very old age, when he had lost everything and had no hope, so to speak, he went and married Ruth. And who came from Boaz? Boaz became the grandfather of David HaMelech himself. And the link to the dynasty of Moshiach. וכן רבי עקיבא, לאחר שקיפח את כל עולמו. So too with Rabbi Akiva. Every time Omer starts, men, we don't shave, we don't listen to music, we don't have weddings for 34 days until Lag BaOmer, or for the Sephardim, Lad BaOmer. Why? Because Rabbi Akiva lost 24,000 of the highest, the greatest tzaddikim of the generation of his students. 24,000. It's not one or two. 24,000 students, and these students were not kids. They were chachamim gedolim, they were great tzaddikim. And he lost all of them in 34 days. And you would think after this, Rabbi Akiva would say, you know what? All right, I'm done. That's it. I gave my whole life. I was poor, I had no money, I was away from my wife for 24 years to build these Talmidim. For 24 years. I got married with her and I left. After 12 years I came back, she wanted me to go back, I went back again. Came back 12 years later with 24,000 students. That's 24 years that I was away from my wife. I sacrificed everything. And then all of those students die in 34 days. You would think that Rabbi Akiva would turn around and say, you know what, I throw in the towel, I'm done. I worked so hard to make such tzaddikim, such geonim, such greats of the generation, and then poof like that? Why? Like so many people ask. We always ask. He didn't. What did he do? He picked up and he started teaching again. He took 5 students. And from those 5 students, we have all of the oral Torah today. Every single oral tradition we have today are from those 5 students of Rabbi Akiva. Imagine if we have 24,000 of them, but that's a different thing. But 5 students of Rabbi Akiva is all of our Torah today. The Talmud, the Zohar, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was a Talmud of Rabbi Akiva. Imagine not having Kabbalah. It was all due to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who was Rabbi Akiva's one of his students. These were the students of Rabbi Akiva that we were talking about. 24,000 of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's passed away in 34 days. However, he didn't give up. He picked right back up. He chose 5 students. He taught them everything he knew. And today we have every ounce of Torah, oral Torah that we have today are from those 5. This teaches us that even though we all have this darkness within us, we all have it. We've discussed it for a couple of weeks now. We all have this darkness, but we also have or. We also have that light. And all you need to light up a room, an entire room full of darkness, is what? Light one match. You don't need a torch. You don't need anything. You just need to break through just a little bit. And Hashem says, I will do the rest. But we just have to break through just a little. Just a little. Hashem says, we said before, Hashem says, open an opening the size of a needlehead, and I will open it into big, huge gates that chariots go through. All you need to do is do part of the work, and I will do the rest. And that's what Hashem wants from us. We're coming to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. Many of us think to ourselves, oh man, after these classes with Rabbi Sachai, there's so many things that I want to change, I don't even know what to start. Well, stop right there. Pick one thing. Pick one thing. And say, Be'ezrat Hashem, don't forget Be'ezrat Hashem. We say, Be'ezrat Hashem, with the help of Hashem, this is one thing that I want to change this year in my spirituality. And Hashem, I want your help. And I know it's going to be difficult, because it is going to be difficult. Because the Yetzer Hara is not going to let us off that easily. He's not going to say, oh yeah, you want to keep Shabbat? Fine, keep Shabbat from now on. You want to do this? Fine. He's not. He's going to make it as difficult as possible. But once we break through, that's it. It'll be a piece of cake. But we have to start somewhere. And it's not going to be something big. Again, all you need is a match to light up an entire dark room. So we don't have to take big steps. You don't have to have a torch. You don't need to light up the room with huge, currents of electricity. All you need is one match. So when it comes to this Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, we have to all think of the things that we could do, we could handle, and make a choice. And say, this year it's going to be different for me. This year it's going to be different because I'm going to choose something and I'm going to stick to it. Everyone has this darkness, but all we have to do is just break through just a little. So fine, I'll choose that thing and I will do it. And it's not going to be like the other years where I say, I wish I could, but I can't. No, we can. We all can. That's the name of the game. Everyone did it. Rabbi Akiva was 40 years old and he couldn't read. Rabbi Akiva was 40 years old and he hated Chachamim. The Gemara says he hated rabbis. Rabbi Akiva couldn't stand to learn Torah. He was 40 years old and he started. And every ounce of oral tradition we have today, we owe it to Rabbi Akiva. So no one can possibly say, no one can have an excuse that, where do I start? Start anywhere. You just have to start. We cannot give up and say, well, what can I tell you? These are my demons. This is my darkness. And it takes me over. There's nothing I can do about it. We just learned for 3 weeks that there is so much we can do about it. Because just as huge and strong that darkness is, The light, the Shekhinah of Hashem, which is within all of us, is tremendously greater than that darkness. We just have to let it in. If we don't let it in long enough, then it'll just become like, shadowy and just lie beneath the darkness as if we don't even have it. And we have so many Jews in the world today that are lost. They're lost souls. Why? Because they've just been so gone for so long, they don't even recognize that light within. Baruch Hashem, we are listening to a shiur here. We all have that light within us. We all feel that light. We all feel that or, the Shekhinah of Hashem. We just have to use it. And with that, I wish everyone a wonderful week. We will, be'ezrat Hashem, continue next week. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.